You ever stop to think that sometimes the biggest twist in a life starts with a simple sandwich? It might sound like an exaggeration, but that's exactly what you're about to discover today. Picture this: a boss, millionaire, discreet, seemingly distant, walks into his own restaurant in disguise and comes face to face with something that makes him freeze mid-order. Two employees, an unexpected conversation, and a truth no one ever dared to say out loud. This isn't just another justice served video. It's a slap in the face to anyone who thinks status defines character. This story will prove that the greatest leaders aren't the ones who speak eloquently in front of cameras, but the ones who listen in the silence of the backstage. And the best part? You'll walk away with life lessons you can actually use, whether you're an employee, a business owner, or just someone tired of watching good people get left behind. So take a deep breath, because this twist won't leave you unchanged. Michael arrived early that day. His coat zipped up to his neck hid more than just the cold. It concealed his true intention. Without anyone noticing, the restaurant owner moved through the hallways, taking mental notes. Poorly washed glasses, eyes that looked away, conversations that suddenly stopped when he got close. It was like watching a movie, and that morning, he was the only attentive viewer. It's in these small, silent stories that the biggest scandals begin to unfold. While the staff repeated their daily routines, Michael was observing more than just movements. He was reading intentions. And here's a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the quietest one is the one who understands the most. When you stay silent and observe, you see what others try to hide. A good leader isn't the one who shouts orders, but the one who notices what no one shows. It's just like with a book. If you only read the headlines, you'll never grasp the heart of the story. He wasn't judging, he was documenting. A folded paper in his pocket, a barely visible pen. With each note he took, a piece of the puzzle fell into place. What seemed like just another ordinary day was about to become an avalanche. And it's funny how the most powerful stories don't start with screams, but with a silence full of purpose. What he uncovered that day didn't quite make sense yet, but something was coming that would change everything. While Michael was still trying to process what he had witnessed, the restaurant's backstage was buzzing with a different energy. Those who seemed most trustworthy were actually the ones scheming behind the scenes. It's always like that. The real villains rarely show up waving red flags. They prefer the theater of good intentions, smiling while they pull the rug out from under you. Stories like this happen every day, in companies, in families, even in friendships. Betrayal often comes from the one you least expect. They twisted conversations, distorted facts, and made up excuses as effortlessly as they served a cup of coffee. The most curious part? Their plan seemed perfect until someone decided to pay attention. And here's a priceless secret. When someone gives you too many versions of the same story, be alert. Truth doesn't need decoration. It survives even in silence. Michael was ready to be the thorn in the side of those who thought they were untouchable. Foiaik is expressos cumcaram madar. Sorrisos se tornaram tenseo, abracos ficaram mais frios, eos cochichos omitram. Era o instinto de quem sente que o castello de cartas esta prestarur. E olha que curioso. Quando alguém tenta controlar demais a narrativa, e porque temuido a esconder. E, como toda grande historia, algo inesperado estava presto a aparecer, vindo de lugar que ninguém dava importância. Nos fundos do restaurante, coberta por caixas velhas e papias esquecidos, estava ela. Uma caixa de papeleo comum, daquelas que ninguém daria valor. Mas o que tinha dentro era tudo, menos comum. Recibos, bilhetes, anotacos e gravacos esquecidos, registros silenciosos de histórias que ninguém queria, que visam autona. É curioso como, muitas vezes, a verdade se esconde nos cantos empoeirados, longe dos olhos apressados. E quem a encontra, raramente é quem busca reconhecimento. O responsável por entregar essa caixa neo fez alarde. Era Henry, o lavador de pratos. Calado, humilde, e quase invisível no dia a dia. Mas foi ele quem teve a coragem de guardar e, no momento certo, revelar tudo. Isso ensina uma coisa poderosa. Você não precisa de status para ser agente de mudança. Às vezes, é a simplicidade que carrega a maior força. E no meio dessa história, Henry Se Tornava o Yellow K Ningwam Viache Gondo. Michael Ficu M Silencio, Maso Corazo Beisha Mais Rapido. Aquilas provas neo so confirmavam suas suspitas, como revelavam algo ainda maior do que ele imaginava. Eaai que as grandes historias ganham vida. Quando o improvável se alia a justica. Maso que ele ainda neo sabia era que aquil gesto singelo estava presta tocar algo muito além das paredes do restaurante. Neo demora muito para que a caixa de verdade ses dos bastidores e chegasse as maus certas. Tudo comico com uma conversa rápida, quasum cicero, entre Michael e uma client habitual, uma mulher influente, discreta, mas com olhos treinados para reconhecer historias que merecem ser contadas. Batu ela falhir alguns papias e ouvir trecho de audio para perceber. Ali havia algo grande. Algo que precisava ser mostrado ao mundo. Foi como acender fósforo number galpeo escuro. Ok comico como desabafo informal viru movimento. Poucas horas, os prints circularam. As provas ganharam espaço nas redes sociais. E a historia deixou de ser segredo. A internet, que tanto amplifica futilidades, agora deva palco para uma injustica escancarada. E isso nos ensina uma lição valiosa. Neo subestime o poder de uma boa historia contada no momento certo. Quando a verdade encontra coração disposto a uvila, ela se espalha como fogo empalha seca. Henry, que antes era so o cara de pia, passou a ser mencionado comentários, elogios e materias locais. Mas o mais bonito era ver que ele neo buscava isso. Sua intenção sempre foi proteger o que era certo. E ali, entre curtidas, compartilhamentos e mensagens de apoio, nascia algo que ninguém podia prever. Uma reviravolta que mostraria que os problemas iam muito além do que já havia sido revelado. Michael, mesmo como coração apertado, sabia que neo podia parar por ali. O que tinha descoberto era sua superfície. E como bom estrategista, desses que neo agem no calor do moco, ele decidiu investigar mais fundo. Foi 8 o escritório, aquele espaço onde poucos entram e quase ninguém questiona. Lá, vasculhou emails antigos, contratos assinados às pressas e movimentos financeiros suspeitos. E como toda boa historia de misterio, quanto mais ele procurava, mais encontrava. Some names that once seemed irrelevant appeared in every document. Details matched the accounts from the box. It was like assembling a puzzle with pieces hidden in locked drawers. And you know what that teaches us? That sometimes, big changes only happen when someone has the courage to open the doors everyone avoids. It's like rummaging through that closet we pretend not to see. There's always a story inside, waiting to be faced. What he discovered was heavy. The real culprits weren't just on the front lines. They held high-ranking positions, wore expensive suits, and hid behind doctored reports. And that sets off a warning. The biggest threats often come from the top. Corruption, when organized, disguises itself as efficiency. But Michael was no longer alone, and he already knew what his next move would be, one that would bring justice, but in a way no one expected. Michael had everything he needed: evidence, testimonies, and the certainty that he hadn't exaggerated a single word of those initial notes. But unlike many, he didn't want a spectacle. No fiery posts, no emotional videos, no vengeful speeches. He knew that true justice doesn't need to shout. It stands firm in the silence of proven truth. And that, my friend, is one of the greatest lessons we can take from this story. Noise doesn't always bring change, but consistency does. In partnership with a lawyer who had seen it all, he organized the documents in chronological order, separated the tampered contracts, and formalized the complaint. It was like setting a trap, only with evidence instead of bait. And when the higher-ups tried to deny everything, the avalanche was already unstoppable. The eyes that once ignored him now respected him. That proves the best response is always the one delivered with elegance, strategy, and a quiet smile. Curiously, Michael didn't fire anyone. The company itself, once the rot was exposed, did what needed to be done. The cleanup started at the top, and those who remained were different. Stories like this teach us that maturity is doing what's right, even when the wrong tries to provoke us. But deep down, what impacted Michael the most wasn't the justice achieved. It was the lesson he learned about the power of forgiveness, which came soon after, in a way he never expected. After everything, what anyone would expect was a fiery speech, a well-planned revenge, or at the very least, a permanent separation. But Michael surprised once again. He called in the employees who had failed him, those who mocked him, those who covered things up, those who stayed silent, and he listened to them, one by one. No accusatory tone, no sarcasm. And there, in the silence of listening, began the most difficult process of all, forgiveness. And that, my friend, is the part of the story few are able to write. Forgiving isn't forgetting, nor accepting the wrongdoing as if nothing happened. It's having the greatness not to let the past decide the future. Michael knew many of them had failed out of fear, insecurity, or necessity. And by recognizing that, he offered something rare, a second chance. You know what's wild? When you offer someone a genuine second chance, they often transform. It's like watering a nearly dried out plant and watching it bloom. And that's exactly what happened there. Some quit out of shame. Others promised to do better, and they did. And the energy in the restaurant changed. Michael's humility became an inspiration, and his story was no longer told as that of a boss who punished, but of a man who taught. And without realizing it, he was planting something greater than justice or redemption. He was planting bonds, trust, and a new way of leading. But what he didn't expect was what came next from the people he least imagined. Michael never sought applause, much less rewards. But something began to happen spontaneously. Customers who followed the story started to mobilize. Neighbors, colleagues, former employees, and even strangers felt moved. A group created an online fundraiser, not to pay off debts or build wealth, but for something far more symbolic, to build a new home. A space where love, respect, and dignity would be the foundation. And we're not just talking about walls, but a true fresh start. With the money raised, they renovated a simple house on a plot of land he had bought years ago, but never had the time or resources to finish. Volunteers painted the walls, donated furniture, and wrote thank you notes. Every detail was made with love. And look at that. Stories like this show that genuine gratitude turns into action. If you want to apply this to your life, start by helping someone selflessly. Sometimes, a small gesture becomes a powerful chain reaction. Michael was deeply moved, not by the material value, but by what it represented. It was life telling him, you did the right thing. And in that new home, he started welcoming visitors, sharing meals, mentoring young people, and listening to stories. He became a reference, even without intending to. But the most beautiful part was still ahead, because someone who lives truthfully and plants kindness doesn't go unnoticed for long. The community was already starting to see this man in a new light. In the beginning, he was just the quiet restaurant owner, the one who rarely appeared in photos, who ate in the back of the kitchen and washed his own dishes. But now, the whole town was talking about him. Michael had become something rare, a living symbol, not for giving grand speeches, but for living with integrity. And it's curious how these stories grow. No one plans to be a hero, but life chooses those who act from the heart. And without realizing it, he had already become a local legend. Children drew his figure at school, adults told his story as an example, and even a mural was painted in the town square with his image and the phrase, "Courage doesn't shout, it transforms." It took time for it to sink in. He still saw himself as the same simple guy who opened a restaurant afraid of failing. But now, people asked for his advice, wanted to hear his ideas. This shows how powerful authenticity can be. When we're true to ourselves, our story speaks for us. Henry shone too. He received a scholarship offered by an NGO that heard about the story. Today, he's studying business and dreams of starting his own venture. And what a turnaround! From dishwasher to future entrepreneur. These stories inspire because they're real, human, and possible. But perhaps the most powerful part of this journey wasn't the fame or applause. It was the invisible impact that spread and made space for something even greater, a change that could transform other lives. The impact of Michael and Henry's story reached a place no one expected, the decision-making tables of public power. Inspired by the events, a city councilor proposed a project to provide real opportunities for at-risk youth. The program was approved. Named Second Chance, it offers professional training, psychological support, and encouragement for small entrepreneurs. A cycle of pain had been broken, and in place of shame, hope began to bloom. The transformation of one life was now impacting hundreds. Michael was invited to give talks, participate in debates, and even though he wasn't fond of the spotlight, he accepted because he understood the purpose. He used to say, "I don't want applause. I want people to do something with what they've learned." And that, in itself, summed up the spirit of all the stories surrounding him. It's like planting a seed in barren soil and, years later, watching an entire forest grow. Those who truly sow good reap the unexpected. And the most moving part was seeing former restaurant employees enrolling in the program, bringing relatives, friends, people who never even dreamed of change. The cycle of injustice that had silently plagued that place was, little by little, being replaced by a new culture, one of care, of justice, of humanity. Michael's life did become an example, but not because of what he suffered, rather because of how he chose to act. And that, my friend, is when we realize that the true revolution begins within a single well-lived story. Now that you've seen all this, tell me, how many injustices have you witnessed in silence? How many stories passed before your eyes, and you thought there was nothing you could do? The truth is, yes, you can, and you should. Michael wasn't a superhero, and Henry didn't wear a cape. But what they had in common was courage. The courage to do the right thing even when no one was watching. And that, my friend, is what truly changes the world. You can apply this knowledge today. Start by being more observant, more just, more firm in your values. At your job, in your home, in your community. You don't have to be the boss to be the example. Great stories begin when an ordinary person chooses to do the extraordinary. So tell me, will you be just another spectator or the protagonist of the change you've been waiting for? If this video made you reflect, then subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and join us on this journey through stories that truly matter. Because here, every word carries a purpose, and you're part of it.